Hello, this is the universe with your wake-up call.
Welcome, everybody. I'm really happy to have Thomas from Paranoid American come and share with us. He's a comic book publisher, an artist. He does a lot of cool stuff, and I really appreciate you taking the time today to share with us, Thomas.
Hey, thanks, man.
Dude, it's really cool. So you and I have been talking back and forth. I was like, oh, we could talk about occult stuff or whatever, you know, and you're like, yeah, that's cool. What do you know about that? And I'm like, well, you know, a little bit. And then you're like, well, yeah, I know a little bit too, you know. I just so happened to attain 32nd degree Mason, you know, on 420 or something like that, which is incredible. The coincidences at work in this reality, I can't even fathom it. But I would love it to talk a little bit about your journey and how you got into that, and you know what you maybe learned about yourself as you kind of opened up to this path, and what you're working on as well. But I guess we can start from the beginning. You know, what got you interested in Masonry?
I guess it's a little bit of a shortcut to that, but the long story short of that is that my dad passed down my grandpa's ring that had a big G on it, and I wore it for years and years when I was in the military and afterwards. And I always thought the G stood for the G in our last name as a family name. So I always assumed that it was this, you know, ring that represented our family and was passed down from his grandpa. And I was working late night graveyard shift at a Kinko's in downtown San Antonio. I was basically in the military during the day and working extra money at a second job during the night. And I'm helping this guy make copies, and he was like, oh, he said some kind of Masonic thing to me, and I had no idea what he was talking about. And he was like, well, why are you wearing that ring? And I was shocked, you know, why asking about my ring? Well, it's from my, you know, family name, from my grandpa. He's like, no, it's not. And then it kind of took me back. He said, no, that's a Masonic ring. That G stands for, you know, the Grand Architect G. And the reason why he knew it was Masonic is because it had these 3 little oak leaves on all the corners. And again, I had no idea what he was talking about. I thought he was just kind of blowing smoke up my ass, because you're used to all sorts of people coming in at 2 a.m. at Kinko's because we had a public bathroom and, you know, warm AC or whatever. But yeah, so he told me a little bit more about that. He told me to look out for the whole like to be one, ask one, bumper stickers mentality. And if no one's ever heard of that before, it's basically if you want to be a Mason, you just ask a Mason. And that's essentially how you get invited in. And he invited me. At that time, I was anti-Mason. I had been listening to, you know, Jordan Maxwell and Lyndon LaRouche, sort of like Alex Jones style thing. This was in the very early 2000s. So at that point, I was almost like, oh, I can't believe I've been wearing this Masonic ring all this time, thinking it was my, you know, grandfather's passed down family ring. And, you know, years and years went on, and I kept doing more and more studies, get more into like occult and a lot of like Tex Mars and sort of like the David Icke symbolism of everything. And eventually I was like, they're either, you know, running the world behind this place, or everyone in my family has been in on it, and I just was the one that wasn't in on it. And it skipped a generation. My dad wasn't Mason or anything. So I just went to a local lodge at some point later on. I think I just turned about 20, maybe a little bit younger. And it was 15 years ago. So and I just went in as a, you know, that the full kind of tarot card thing, like stepping off the cliff into a whole new unknown, totally out of my comfort zone. This big, huge center with a bunch of old people, you know. And then, you know, over time, it turned less into a feeling like I was infiltrating, you know, this covert society to find out all the secrets and what they were hiding from me and then from the rest of the world, into, oh, okay, I kind of understand a little bit more now that it's a group of people that care enough about sort of introspection and arcane philosophy and things that aren't very popular now unless you go on to like a forum or something, and to find them in like real life and talk in person and you know, get like life stories from them and not just links to Amazon and stuff like that. So over time, I just sort of really enjoyed kind of the information that I got of it. And then as you mentioned, I went all the way up to 32nd degree, which is far more impressive than it sounds. I assure you, it's not that huge of a feat. If you can memorize something, then you can make your way up. So that was kind of my foray into the Masons. But I think that I kind of came to what you would consider an awakening far before that. That was just sort of this alternate form of research that I kind of got taken in and ultimately joined a club. I think I wouldn't discount the fact that I'm very gullible and I'm very into like joining things. America's always been known as a country of joiners. You know, like even like in the early 1920s and 1900s when masonry started taking like a bigger foothold, it was because of that whole like joiner aspect. And most people were members of like 5 or 6 different clubs. And so I think that's probably ingrained in my DNA somehow. It's just like always wanting to join something. I can't help it.
Yeah, I suffer from that too. I mean, I think there's something tribal about us for sure, that, you know, that we want to be part of something. We want to, you know, connect and be part of something that's bigger than ourselves. Man, that's so interesting. Can we go back just a little bit to, you know, your first awakening and talk a little bit about that if you're cool with it?
It's hard for me to pinpoint because I feel I watch a couple of your shows and some of the other guests and stuff on this show, and I feel a little bit of an outlier. I always do in a way, but that I don't ever remember believing in any sort of religion. I was born and raised strict Roman Catholic up until I was made enough of a stink that my parents stopped bringing me to church because it was more of a nuisance than anything else. But I just remember just never believing in any of it, not because it was like a counterculture pushback thing. For whatever reason, it just didn't make sense to me. If someone had sat me down and explained it in a way that it made logical sense, I probably would have been all in, but it never happened to me. And I remember even asking questions in Sunday school. I remember one question in particular, they were talking to us about hell, and I was, 11, 10, something like that. And I just remember asking the question out loud, if you burn forever, like, wouldn't you get used to it after a while? Even if it took 10 or 20 years, at a certain point, you'd be like, okay, yeah, it's really hot here, but I'm no longer in like the excruciating pain that I was when it started.
I've acclimated.
Yeah, exactly. Like, wouldn't you become acclimated at some point? And it was explained to me very shortly that no, it doesn't work that way. And apparently afterwards, they asked my parents not to bring me back to Sunday school unless I was just going to sit there and fill the coloring books out or whatever. So I kind of parted ways at that point, and shortly after that, it was like, okay, well, if you stay home and do chores, then you don't have to go to church. And I preferred that more so than anything, because at least in Roman Catholic Church, it's a lot of being quiet and then standing and then sitting and then listening for the bells and then standing again. And it's that for, an hour and a half plus maybe a little 15-minute break where they read out, car deals and the local craft shops and stuff like that. So anyways, I was very disconnected. I never really felt in tune with any of it. But then over time, I started learning more about, I guess, like agnosticism and some other like very independent forms of study that didn't require church. I found the Gospel of Thomas, I found the Gospel of Judas, and these kind of made a lot more sense to me, especially like the Gospel of Judas and Thomas, where or Thomas is like, pick up any rock, there I am kind of thing. And it was specifically, you don't need to go to church. If you see a guy sitting in a whole big gold chair with all this expensive, stained glass behind him, that's not necessarily the way to it. You can just look in a cloud of dirt somewhere and you can find the same sort of knowledge in there. So that was when I think I transitioned from being, I guess, born atheist in a way into more agnostic. And then that just kind of unravels more and more over time, right? So now it's like, well, maybe agnosticism isn't the full answer, but to me, it's like you were telling me before, just realizing how stupid and ignorant you are, just in general. And then on top of that, I just know how very gullible I am. I can fall for stuff, very, very easily, which makes me extra. You mentioned another quote, Robert Anton Wilson, where I don't believe in many things. I'm just very, I guess
suspicious. Yeah.
Suspicious. I don't believe. I very much, apply that to sort of my worldview.
Man, I love that. It's helped me so much, and especially in relating to other people, because it's like, your perspective is valid. I'm not going to discredit you just because you see something differently from me. There are infinite perspectives, and we're also using words to try and accurately depict something that is beyond definition so often. So it's like, how do you even quantify that? But it's been really helpful, and it's so cool to talk to you and about, you know, that whole thing, you know. And you know, I would love to hear just about kind of what got you into doing what you're doing now. How did you find your path? How did you really decide, hey, you know, I know what I want to create and put out there artistically? How did that start to form?
So I guess I'm lucky in a way that I feel like I always knew what I wanted to do from very, very young age, like 5 or 6, essentially. I knew I wanted to talk to computers forever. That was like, I wanted that to be my job and my everything. And my best friend and next door neighbor, he drew comics all the time, and I tried as hard as I wanted to. I could never quite draw the way that, you know, he could. And his dad was a computer programmer. So I guess just being really close with my friend, it just absolutely shaped and set me on a path that I couldn't have, you know, set myself off of no matter how hard I tried.
Wow.
So over time, I just loved computers from forever. I felt like it was this language that I could speak that could not be misinterpreted in a way. Like whatever I said was exactly what it did, and I could, you know, there was this very explicit communication two-way. There was no ambiguity, and there was no like different ways of interpreting the things that I wanted to have done. And you know, it turns you antisocial in a way. So, but I found this whole spark of being able to create something out of literally nothing, like out of the effort and the energy and the focus that you just put into this digital box, and out on the other end comes music and artwork and writing and books and movies and anything you could think of. And I just remember that whenever I just kind of noticed that's how it worked, I was like, I want to do that. I want to create things out of nothing, essentially. So it kind of started me down that path. I was on to computer programming. I think my first programmer around age 11, when I was like decompiling old games and trying to like add my face to them and you know, add special things to them. And fast forward many years in the future, I remember at some point coming across this concept of NLP through a very roundabout way. It was through Darren Brown videos where he's this mentalist from the UK, and he does really great magic tricks and stuff. But there was a couple videos I watched like back to back, and he was trying to implant this suggestion on the member that he was talking to. And at the end of it, I was getting the exact same suggestions that his guests were on this pre-recorded, you know, TV show. And it absolutely blew my mind, because I was like, okay, whatever that gullibility thing is that's in my brain, like this guy knows how to like push that button exactly. He's got it down to a science. And that was how I indirectly started learning about NLP a little bit. This was also right around the time, this was shortly after I had already joined the Masons, and NLP came up into a whole nother avenue where I was looking into memory work, because there's a whole lot of things you have to memorize because you're not allowed to commit anything to writing and things like this.
Wow.
So it was one of these instances. I find this all throughout life, I'm sure you do too, where there's this one topic that just like every other avenue of your life that you're already familiar with starts like pointing at this same thing in different ways. So it was like, okay, I guess that's the next thing for me to learn. And being an absolute conspiracy minded individual too at that point, finding out that like the NLP links to, you know, MK Ultra versus the self-help aspect versus almost the magical aspect of intent and you know, energy. All of this kind of culminated in a really strange way, but I would say like the grand awakening was sort of this meeting of wanting to understand psychology and understanding things in a very like programmatic, logical sense of things. And then I guess that resurgence of all of the crazy Roman Catholic deities and saints and mysticism, they all just kind of like clicked together, and I was like, oh, like I can make this make sense to me. You know, it was like finding, hopefully all of that framework that I had learned over the years wasn't a complete waste, because I can make it useful for me, because it's, you know, it's built there and there's a structure there that I can follow. So that it's a roundabout way, but that was sort of how I kind of saw my awakening coming.
Man, I love how you put that. Yeah, that's so cool. I want to get deeper in. I want to ask you, you know, to share, you know, what you're working on now, what, you know, and how people can discover that. And then if you're cool with it, we'll start over again and kind of just go a little bit deeper into the occult stuff, and
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
I'll put that out as kind of a bonus thing. But please tell us, you know, what you're working on now, and where people can find your work.
Yeah, well, I'll start with what you can find now, because it's all very recent. I just started putting some stuff on Amazon. So I've got a whole little collection. I'll just show you rapid here. So I've got this MK Ultra pamphlet that basically breaks down the whole history of MK Ultra from the 1970s through today. And it's just kind of got, well, I'm going to disappear as I do this. Here, I'm going to get rid of my background.
That looks great, by the way.
Oh, here we go. So yeah, this right here is a book format. I've got another version of this that's in like a chick track format. You can kind of see it hinted on the back page here. If you go to paranoidamerican.com, you can get the chick track version. Otherwise, everything else here I've got is the Amazon format. I got another one called Fiction Faction. This is sort of just like a mishmash. If you just took a hat and wrote a whole bunch of random conspiracy theories and threw them in a hat, and then took 3 out and made a comic out of each of those pairings, that's essentially what this is.
Cool.
So we've got like here, we got Ben Franklin bodies, hollow earth pollution, chemtrail, Nazi werewolves, occult fast food. So this one is made by it was a brother team called the Obscure Gentlemen that are hilarious, and they've got their own thing. But this one is just like a really fun, totally fictional way of getting some of the more like darker topics in a light way. Just a very easy read.
I love that.
This one's a little off the wall. So this is a children's book about chemtrails.
That's awesome, dude.
The confounding conspiracy of chemtrails, and it's 100% a children's book. Like it's not even written as like an adult book. It's 100% written as a children's book, but it has cool little tidbits. Like one of the here's them going through the astral plane. So every time they go on a field trip, they go to this underground bunker, which then turns into the astral plane, and then they end up in whatever place they need to kind of learn about what the topic is. And this one being about chemtrails. So like here's a really good example of if we can show here, where it's talking about HR 2977 Space Preservation Act, which specifically mentions the term chemtrails as a subdivision of exotic weapon systems. So the whole point of this originally was the point for connect the dots was that there are some theories that are discounted so easily, and all you really have to do is like, look, here's the research. So it's almost like I'm connecting the dots for you. And it was very much like a sarcastic way of like, all right, if you don't want to believe it, I'm going to write it to you as a children's book. But yeah. It's not really like a snarky thing. It legitimately turned into like a fun children's book, very lighthearted. The second one is called the Secret Society Job Fair. So all the kids learn about like the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn and the Freemasons and the Bavarian Illuminati. And
dude, that is amazing. No, I love how on the nose it is. That's what makes it great parody, you know, like I think that is just fantastic. It's like if we start using baby talk, people will understand a little more clearly.
I mean, if you can explain it to a 5th grader or a 6th grader, then anyone should be able to understand it, really.
I love it.
This is the one that I first started out. It took me about 10 years to finish because I had no idea what I was doing when I started. But it's just an anthology of 8 different stories from 8 different writers and 8 different artists, but it covers things from the CIA drug scandal of Iran-Contra. It talks about, there's a story in here about Prescott Bush and his friends digging up Geronimo's bones for the Skull and Bones temple. It's kind of covers a whole bunch of different gamuts. This one's probably the best one if you want to get like a wide sampling of a whole bunch of different stories. Got a whole list of the different people that's involved. So, and this one also has a sneak peek of a comic that's coming out soon called Never a Straight Answer, about Stanley Kubrick directing the moon landing.
Awesome, dude. That's gonna be
I'll tell you more about that in a little bit.
Oh, that's so cool.
And then finally, this is all the things that are available on Amazon now. I've got my Time Sampler series, which is right now 5 different issues. It starts where they go back in time to Jekyll Island, and they meet all the originators of the Federal Reserve, and just kind of like start from there. We uncover the concept of human sheep hybrids named sheeple, which were originally they were originally created as like the help, so that they could, you know, not have to ask humans for help. They could have the sheeple do all the help for them, and it kind of wildly got out of control. Let's see. The second issue starts to break down the concept of MK Ultra and positive and negative and creation and destruction and sort of duality in a way. So hence the cover here.
Cool.
The third one's probably my favorite issue out of all of them so far. This one takes the writings of Fritz Springmeier and Cisco Wheeler, which wrote about how to create an Illuminati mind control puppet slave. And you know, he went to jail for like a bank robbery later on. But anyways, it sort of illustrates exactly what they termed as this MK Ultra subject, where they would take a baby and inject it with, you know, needles at a certain point to begin that very first element of trauma, and essentially creating these alter egos around the concepts of major traumas. And it's a dark subject, but we make a lot of fun and a lot of dick and poop jokes on the way. So this issue 4 is where they start to learn about Akashic records and the inner library. We talk about Camp Montauk and Camp Hero, where there was claims to being able to like travel back in time and influence, like the Philadelphia Project was one of those examples. This starts to get more into sort of occult knowledge, and we bring up the character of Nikola Tesla, and he starts to become like a main figure. And then the most recent issue, this one just came out maybe last month on Amazon, and this is about Nikola Tesla. It's about the Titanic sinking and like the 5 or 6 different Titanic conspiracy theories that are all related to that. And then it brings them back into the modern day, where Aleister Crowley has been brought back to life by like Donald Trump and Tim Cook and George Soros. And now they have to figure out how to battle Aleister Crowley. And Aleister Crowley is sort of disappointed because he thought that like the evil world domination scheme would have been much farther along by now.
That is
so
fantastic, dude.
That's everything that's available now. And then in the next week or two, I've got a series of coloring books coming out. One of them is called Paranoid Portraits. It's 33 different portraits of just different people and lots of baked in symbolism. And it's, you know, coloring books, so get it for your kids. There's another one that's about all American specific cryptozoology. I've got one worked on all different artists, is a combination of Lovecraft and modern politics. So it's like, what if January 6th happened again, but Cthulhu was there, things like that. And then I've got another one that's just essentially a crazy art. It's called Cult of the All-Seeing Eye. And there's just these insane murals that will just take you, hours to color through all these kinds of details. And then steering it back to something that a little bit more on topic here, I've been working for the last 3 or 4 years on a series called Secret Mystery School. That it's started as me with a very ambitious ideas of wanting to basically recreate secret teachings of all ages, but as a comic book, and convey the knowledge in there. Of course, just you get about 1% into that and you're like, okay, there is a lot here to cover, and almost assuming that you could even cover it all and not miss so much and be criticized for that. So long story short, that went from a very lofty goal of I'm going to remake Secret Teachings to maybe I'll just do a comic strip about a college student that gets so stoned that he accidentally becomes enlightened and essentially taps into this Akashic records or inner library because he had the perfect blend of DMT and psilocybin and marijuana or whatever. And on this school trip, all the planets essentially align, and this entity, this ascended master, sort of takes note that, oh, there's this other conscious, highly elevated being, and bestows all the knowledge on them, but they're not ready for it. They're just a bunch of stoner college kids, and they essentially become trapped in this realm of philosophers and deities and people that are very smart and have like all the knowledge of the universe, and they're just like accidentally there because they smoked a little too much. And the series is about them trying to find their way back to kind of reality.
I love that. That's great. They're like, yeah, cool, Emerson. I just want some Funyuns,
Yeah.
like I just want a Diet Coke, bro. But no, dude, I love the way that you're putting that stuff together. I'm going to make sure all that stuff, all your links are in the notes of this. And we're going to continue, folks. Come and check us out on the Rockfin. We're going to go a little bit deeper, but I wanted to really share, because I think your work is amazing and I'm so excited. I really appreciate you taking the time to come and share your story with us. It means a lot. And so for people who are out there, go and check out Thomas's work. Like, he's on Instagram at Paranoid American. And like I said, I will put all the links, because what a great and fun way to look into some of these ideas. There's no pressure. It's not heavy. I love the way that you're presenting this stuff, and the mixes are just comically great.
I think that was a huge inspiration, was realizing at a certain point, all the conspiracy theory and occult research, it was like either so obscure and beating me over the head, or it was all coming from this very angry standpoint of, them against us. And it was very serious and very Bible thumpy in some ways, depending on your sources. And just stepping back and saying, like, what would be a good medium that would take all of that seriousness out, but still allow you to convey all the symbolism and everything else. And I mean, comic book format is just perfect, because if someone gets angry at it, you just take a step back and you're like, you're screaming at a comic book right now. And I fully understand that weasel mentality of like, oh, well, if I'm just telling jokes, then I don't have to stand behind any statements that I'm making, and I don't have to actually have beliefs in anything. And I think if you read through it, you'll definitely see that there is a consistent theme and there are some consistent beliefs and opinions. But yeah, at the same time, like, I'm going to show Diogenes and talk about the philosophy of Diogenes, and then I'm going to show him pooping on somebody's chest, because that's exactly what Diogenes would do.
That's great, man. No, that's beautiful. I love it. I like, and I understand the cop out too. Like, I was into something earlier this week where people were being really harshly criticized over something because they weren't comedians, and then the comedians were like, well, I can say whatever I want. I've carte blanche. And it's like, but that doesn't seem fair either. If you're going to hold these people to a standard, but you're not held to it, you're kind of just a dick at that point. You're just using it as an excuse because it's comedy. And yeah, so it's a fine line there, but I think you are really on a great balance with it. So, dude, it's awesome.
I appreciate it, man. And honestly, and anyone that's listening and watching your show, like, this is your niche. You probably won't find another comic book company that is so specifically catered to this kind of research. So please give it a look,
dude. Definitely, yeah, definitely give it a look, everybody. This is what's so exciting about ideas coming together and being creative and not and collaborative and different ideas mixing together and opening up. I think it's such a beautiful recipe for ascension, enlightenment, higher purpose, those types of things. And we have to be able to look at things with levity, because that helps you not make it such a big deal. It's like, oh, okay, well, I can laugh at this. That means it doesn't control me. And I think there's something that's really powerful about that, and bringing these ideas in a way where it's like, you're not beheld to them. You don't have to join some community or like marketing list or something like that, but you can entertain things and open up to different ideas and see some of the truths that are underlying. I just think the presentation's awesome, and I'll stop now, but everybody go check it out. Go check the stuff out. I've got links in the show notes, and come and check us out. We're going to talk a little bit more exclusively on Rockfin, and I'll post it to my Patreon. Thanks so much for checking out this episode. Send us your story. We'd love to hear it. We'd love to share. Be sure to subscribe and rate the podcast, and check back often for more great content. BlueCollarMystics.com.